Welcome, everybody. Once again, I'm Drew Carter from the Office of Admission at Holy Cross. Happy Patriots Day to those of you celebrating. I'm so excited that you're here today for our first in this week-long series of webinars directed at high school juniors. We did a week-long series in February as well, and all of those are archived on our website. Those were different topics, so I'd encourage you to check those out. This entire week will be archived as well. So if there's part of today's session or any of the other sessions that you're unable to make, please check out the website. We're happy to have you watch those archived versions. A few notes before we get started. Closed captioning is available down at the bottom. Please put in questions in the Q&A. I've got a whole bunch of questions for our two panelists loaded up, but I'm happy to feed them any of your questions as well. And I'm super excited to have both of our panelists here today. Eddie, I'm going to start with you right away. I'm going to have you answer our first question. And when you do, if you could just tell us your name and where you're from, maybe where you went to high school. And I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about your senior year in high school. What did you think you wish had gone differently? What do you wish you had focused on? I know when we talked earlier, you sort of regret letting your guidance counselor do so much driving of the process with your college search process. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. From everyone, thank you for having me. It was nice to be here. My name is Eduardo Osed. I'm from New York City. I'm a current junior at the college studying psychology. I work for the admissions office. I'm also the co-chair for the Latin American Student Organization. There's a couple of things that I do. But overall, I wouldn't say exactly like regret. I think it was just more of, I wanted to be a bit more involved in my process. My guidance counselor took a lot of the initiative and initiating a lot of my first initial conversations with colleges. I think I just really wanted to be like more part of the process in terms of seeing like what kind of things I wanted in my classrooms, what kind of relationships I wanted to see on campus with my professors, other students, stuff like that. So I'd say, yeah, just those things, like being more involved in the actual process than actually letting my admissions counselor do everything for me.
And why do you think you sort of assumed that role? Was it because you didn't know the questions to ask and you sort of let them drive? Yeah, how do you think you could have like done that differently?
Yeah, I think as a student in high school, I was just very involved with a lot of things, and I became very busy, right? Especially my junior year, senior year. That's around the time when you start getting really involved in like some of the organizations you're doing, some of your sports. So I sort of assumed the role because I'm like, I don't really have time to sit down and look for colleges for after school. I have basketball practice, baseball practice. I have orchestra to do. I have a whole bunch of stuff to do. I don't have time. So I sort of just told my counselor, I was like, listen, whatever school you see me best at, go ahead and just put it on my list. I really don't care. I do regret that aspect, saying that like I really don't care, because I would have loved to expand my options, obviously. But yeah, I'm like super happy with the way everything turned out, especially ending up at Holy Cross. I think it's one of the best decisions I've ever made, ultimately. So I did sort of assume the role of responsibility in terms of deciding the school at the end. Just getting a little bit more involved towards the beginning would have been nice. Yeah.
And Jacob, when we were talking before, we were talking about that interaction of where a guidance counselor will just throw a list of schools at you. I'd like to hear you talk a little bit about what that meant when people told you just research these schools. Did you know what that meant? Did you know how to research schools? And before you answer, just let us know who you are, where you're from, and a few of those things.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. So my name is Jacob Hendricks. I am from Shrewsbury, Massachusetts. I went to Shrewsbury High School, so only a few miles outside of campus. But on campus, I am a tour guide and part of the community-based learning program. And exactly what Eddie was saying, how once they start developing these lists for you and names are being thrown at you left and right, people are telling you to research colleges, I immediately was very afraid and scared of how much was in front of me. And I didn't know how to go forward. I didn't know what it meant to research a college. This was one of the things that I wish had been taught to me, because it really is so simple. Just by going to the college website, you could click on their mission statement to learn what they're all about, or even just about us will often have pictures and just things that the college wants to emphasize that they're known for to display to you. So I think once you realize those things, it can make the college search process a lot less intimidating.
That's a great point, Jacob. And I think obviously, especially now, even during the pandemic, there's so many more resources available online for high school students to learn about particular colleges. What were you most nervous about when you were a high school senior and you were thinking about being in college? What made you most
Mhm.
nervous?
Well, I think it's the same that I've talked to with a lot of my friends. The thing that made me the most nervous was they make it seem like this giant bubble that you'll enter college and it's going to be so different, that your whole life will be different. Teachers tell you in high school, don't mess this up. You're not allowed to have a redo because when you get to college, it's not like that. When you get to college, it's not like this. But one of the things that was most relieving when I got here, and I know that Eddie, it was a little bit different maybe, but it's still your same life. It's still the same classroom setting. It's still making friends that will be by your side, just like in high school. So even though it might be something that's nerve wracking, it's not something you have to worry about too much.
And Eddie, so you wish that you had taken more of a role with your guidance counselor and some of the conversations. Did you have the opportunity to tour many schools? And if you did or didn't, like how did that affect how you learned about colleges?
I actually did not have the opportunity to tour many schools. I went to a charter school, low income, right, in an urban community where we were like trying to get back on our feet as a school overall and as a network overall. Actually, in the middle of my high school career, we had a school come in and take over for us. So we didn't really have that many opportunities to take trips to colleges and stuff like that. We had smaller trips, yeah, but none that were really like appealing to me or that stuck with me. And that really did impact my decision a lot on college because I had to go a lot through virtual tours. Even before the virtual world was a thing, I had to look at the schools through Google Photos. I had to just basically go off of like the brochure picture that the colleges put out, and that's not something I really wanted. I wanted something that felt more authentic and raw. I wanted to see what the school is actually like, because we all know that online some of the schools, they just they want to show you what they want to show you, right? And I think that becomes a bit problematic for students looking at schools, because you're sort of like giving them this false image of what the school can probably be like. I know that personally, when I was looking at Holy Cross, that's something I didn't feel at all. And that's the reason, one of the huge reasons I'm here right now, because the students were authentic as we're trying to be right now with everyone. We're trying to keep everything real. And that's something I really appreciated in the school overall. And everything I saw during my process as a senior in high school hasn't changed in terms of Holy Cross and what they actually showed me.
Jacob, you start learning about all these colleges during your senior year of high school. It doesn't get confusing though, if like, how do you keep them separate? Like, did you keep notes? I know some people keep a spreadsheet. Some people just have sort of perfect memory for the ability to differentiate between colleges. Did you have a system during your senior year, or do you wish you had a system?
Yes, so it gets extremely confusing. And the one thing that I wish I had done was take notes. I will say it over and over, take notes, take notes, take notes, because you'll start with this big view of all of the different colleges in a potential area you might want to look at. And you'll start really zoomed out with the size that you want, the location, maybe if you want in the city versus out of the city. And once you define these big characteristics, you'll see that there's a lot of schools still in that meet that criteria. And as you're visiting these schools, you notice at the time, oh, I like these things, I don't like these things, this was at this school, at that school. But if you don't take notes, again, I'll emphasize it, take notes in your head, they will all just begin to mesh together. And I found myself, I couldn't necessarily remember what school it was that had certain aspects I liked. I just started to remember what I did like, but I couldn't figure out where it was. So definitely keeping notes and keeping things in order will be very helpful.
So Jacob, we have a question here in the Q&A from an attendee. And I'm curious
Yes.
if you have an answer to this. So the question is, did you have a particular question you would ask that helped you judge a school's authenticity? Or did you have a specific question you would ask of a variety of schools? I guess, did you, and if you didn't, is there something you can think of as a good question to ask? I'll ask you, Eddie, next, if your thoughts on this. But Jacob, did you have a question in your head that you would ask or wish you'd asked?
Yeah, definitely. The biggest thing that I didn't even have to ask, because a lot of tours will provide the answer for you, but at the very end, tours will conclude with why a student chose to go to a certain school. And I typically found that what their answer was pretty much set the message and the motto for the school and the tone of the student body as a whole. Because something that was very important to me in the college search process was a kind and caring community where everyone looked after one another. And so when the tour guides would answer that they felt at home because the students are supportive and teachers are friendly, that was what was most important to me when I was going on these tours.
How about you, Eddie? Was there a consistent theme to look for that helped you sort of measure schools against each other?
I think the biggest thing for me, so I know that going into college, obviously, you're gonna have to be taking classes, you're gonna have to be in school, right? So that's something that I already knew. Like I knew that that's something that's gonna happen. So I didn't really focus too much on that aspect, what it would look like inside of a classroom, especially because a lot of my schools were focused with smaller classroom sizes because that's what I wanted in a college, and I made sure my admissions counselors knew that. But I would honestly focus on what the students did outside of the classroom. So I would focus on the little things that they would tell me that they would do on their free time, what students like to do on the weekends, whether or not their city in which their college was located was like a college town in which there's multiple colleges surrounding them, like Worcester, where Holy Cross is at. So I would focus on those little things because I knew that in order for me to have, a very a great experience in college, I would need to have a balance between my classroom activities and what I was going to be doing outside of the classroom. So that's what I focused on, a lot of the extracurricular things that the students did outside of the classroom.
Jacob, I know sometimes high school kids and even their parents have this idea that they're going to find the perfect school. When the reality is that it's certainly possible to find lots of schools that you're interested in. Did you have like a lightning bolt moment where you were struck and just realized that there was only one school for you and that happened to be Holy Cross? Or did you have the experience where you just sort of, you learned about schools and you found out you liked lots of them and one of them ended up being a better fit for you than the others?
Well, definitely looking at multiple schools on my tour, I had several very high ranking ones. And these final few, I would go on multiple tours. I had ended up going on, I think, 4 or 5 different tours or info sessions for Holy Cross before I had decided it was my number one. And then at that point, you start to think you're getting input from your guidance counselors about when the number game starts to come in and where your chances would be best of getting in. So once I decided Holy Cross was better than these other schools, it was kind of like a lightning bolt moment in that applying early decision, I had decided it would be a binding contract had I gotten in, which luckily, thank God I did. And so although there were several other schools, Holy Cross did stand out as my top for me.
All right, Eddie, another question for you from the Q&A from some of our attendees. What's the biggest difference between high school and college life?
Yeah, right off the bat, I would easily say time. The amount of time you have on your hands is completely up to you, right? In college, you're not going to be taking 8 or 9 courses in a day. You're going to have a lot of free time on your hands, but I'd say the biggest thing is responsibility as well and discipline. You need to be able to, actually have a balance in that social life in the classroom, because if you're doing if you're spending a lot of the time of your free time out doing nothing and not putting in the work in your classrooms inside and outside of the classroom, you're not going to do well in college. And in high school, sometimes classes come naturally to students. I made the mistake my first year of coming in thinking that school came natural to me. Like I knew in high school, I'm like, yeah, this is all easy to me. I have really good grades, da da da. But in college, you cannot come in with that mindset because those classes become very difficult very fast. Schools like Holy Cross expect their students to come in, open-minded and ready to learn. I came in too overconfident, and I think that was one of the biggest differences that I needed to, put myself back in check and used a lot of my extra time to study, to make notes, to make study guides, to be successful in my classroom in order for me to have fun in my social life.
That's great insight about coming in overconfident, that there is a difference between the high school classroom and the college classroom. Jacob, question for you from the Q&A. Do you think at Holy Cross, every student enters without a major? Everybody's required to enter undeclared. Was that helpful to you?
It was extremely helpful. And I'll say that coming in, I wanted to be pre-med and I do not belong in bio classes. So that ended up switching for me. But in my opinion, it's only helpful because even though you come in undeclared, you still have the opportunity to major in whatever you want, also adding a double major or a major and a minor. So it's not like you're being held back in any way by having to explore a little bit in the beginning. If anything, it's allowing you now to fine tune into what you want to do so that in this later progression, when you have to take harder classes that are more directly applied to a major, it's something you're particularly interested in versus feeling stuck like you might be if you go to a school that's only for one or two majors.
And we are lucky enough to be joined by our third panelist. Caroline, I've got a question for you. When you were in high school, your senior year, did you have an idea about what you wanted to study in college? And how did that match with the reality once you got to college? And before you answer, if you can just tell us who you are, where you're from, just a little bit of that. But we're most excited to hear about your experience of knowing.
Yeah. So hi, I'm Caroline Manganaro. Sorry for the late entrance. I'm home, so the Wi-Fi was not working. Virtual learning is tough, but I am a sophomore. I'm a psychology major, and I had no idea what I wanted to study coming into college. I knew 5 or 6 professions maybe I'd be interested in, and they were not related to each other. But coming to Holy Cross, no one was declared, which took so much of the pressure off of me. Especially senior year in high school, everyone's like, I want to be a nurse. I want to do this. I know exactly what I want to do. And I kind of felt like I stuck out because I didn't. But then when I got to Holy Cross, everyone was undeclared. And since it's a liberal arts school, you can take common requirements. So I didn't feel like I was behind at all. I got to take classes that I wouldn't have taken otherwise. And then I kind of figured it out as I went. And so now I'm studying psychology, but I still have friends that are exploring or that unsure. And those common requirements ensure that you're going to explore different things that you didn't even know you would like. So that was very reassuring to me.
And one more question, Caroline. As you were, if you remember back to your senior year of high school, when you were thinking about the, starting to apply to college and imagining yourself, what made you nervous about the idea of being in college? What was that creating anxiety in you?
I think it was just for me the unknown, because I've been in Winchester public school system since I was in kindergarten. So I was with the same kids, small grade, everyone knew everyone, you know what to expect. College is so unexpected and there's so many options being thrown at you, so much information that I was very overwhelmed. But I have to say now, being in college, it's very similar to your high school life, besides the fact you're on your own and you have a little bit more freedom with what you study, but you're still you. And I think that's something it's very reassuring to know that, yes, you're going to be in a different place, you're going to make new friends, but you're still the same person. You're still going to find the things that you found in high school, the clubs, the niches, the things that you like. So I was very overwhelmed by, I think, just the unknown. But once I got here, I was like, oh, I'm still the same person. I still have the same interests, but maybe my horizons just being broadened and I can explore them more. So that for me was what I was most worried about, but it definitely was assuaged by coming to Holy Cross.
Jacob, was there something that you felt like would have helped you prepare as a student in the college world? Eddie mentioned sort of, I don't know, sort of maybe not being totally prepared in his mindset for what college academics was going to be like. Do you think there's something you can do to better prepare for academics at the college level?
I would say that compared to high school, one of the big differences is that the teachers will less throw study guides at you and tell you exactly what you need to study. And in that case, you need to be a little bit better prepared to be paying attention in class and reviewing the worksheets that you're doing as you're getting them. I think that's something that I slowly learned as I was getting into school, because once you start, if you were hopefully not to fall behind, the class just keeps moving and it's expected that you know the material and are able to build off of it. So taking some time each day or each week to review what you did the week before will be extremely helpful for these classes in college.
Okay, Caroline, at Holy Cross, we talk about what it means to be a liberal arts school. And I don't know about you when you were a high school senior, but when I was a high school senior, I remember somebody talking to me about a liberal arts school, and I thought, that's not right for me. I don't want to study art. So very clearly, I did not understand what liberal arts meant. Did you know what that meant when you were a high school senior? And if so, if not, like, what did you think of it? And were there other things that were confusing to you, other like words or terminology that you just didn't understand?
I definitely understood it, but like at a very surface level, I was like, okay, there's going to be required classes, which for me, I love structure. So I was like, that's great. But I also had friends that were like, I don't like this subject. I don't like this subject. Like for me, I don't like science. And so that was like a daunting thing. I was like, oh, like I want liberal arts, but that might be like a little annoying. And then I ended up taking microbiology of a hurricane, which is like very cool and a very like niche class. So I think what I didn't understand, I knew what liberal arts was. What I didn't understand is that the classes you're taking aren't going to be like these major requirement classes. They have classes for you specifically knowing you're not a science major, you're not this major. So like, for example, for my art class, I'm not very artistically inclined. I took hip hop, which is like, it was so fun. It was very laid back. It wasn't for professional dancers. So you're not going to have to take the classes you took in high school that's like straight English, straight math. You can take these classes that are designed for non-majors that are less intensive, and you still get to explore a subject that you would never have the opportunity to explore otherwise. So that's something I didn't realize coming in that I definitely appreciate.
How about you, Jacob? Did you have a sense of what liberal arts was, or were there other things that were confusing to you?
So one of the things that I would say not to let people around you deter you from is that in my Boy Scout troop, there was actually an adult who came up to me and he was like, well, what are you going to major with liberal arts? He was like, liberal arts doesn't get you XYZ jobs, but you have a major, but it is liberal arts. So some people, their understanding might be so just like far from not knowing what it is that you still have a major. You just also get to explore other areas as well, which is incredibly beneficial.
Okay, a question for all of you, which is a question from one of our attendees. Did any of you use a timeline or a spreadsheet to help yourself keep organized? I think when you start to think, I'm going to apply to 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 schools, and they all have different deadlines and they all have different requirements. Did anyone have a way to organize any of that stuff? Or do any of you wish you had some way to organize any of that stuff? I'll throw this out to all three of you.
I know for me, sorry. It was easy because I did early decision to Holy Cross. So that made it a lot easier because I ended up only applying to Holy Cross. I had some other ones ready to go, but then once I heard back, since it was rolling, it took a lot off my plate. But I did have just like, I think it was just a Google Doc with all the deadlines and stuff. It seems very overwhelming, but once you're in it and once you get through it, it's really not as bad as it looks. The school send you so much information on like when things are due, and a lot of things are overlapping with the common application and stuff like that. So it's not as bad as it looks. You definitely need to keep yourself organized, but I did luck out in that I only applied to Holy Cross and it was early.
Yeah, I completely agree with Caroline. I think I didn't exactly have a timeline or anything like, in terms of organization for the thing, because I also applied early decision to Holy Cross. So by the time I heard back from them, it was in around November, December-ish. And at that point, I did have other schools, ready on my common application, to submit applications to. But by the time I heard back, I didn't need to worry about it. I knew going into my last semester in high school that I already been accepted to college, and it was a college that I wanted to go to. So it really did take a lot off of my plate. But like she said before, the process is It is extensive. It will be long for some applications, but as long as you keep some sort of organization, I highly recommend that you do. You should be fine.
Jacob, did you have any way to organize yourself?
I was hesitant on answering this question because for myself, I was not too organized with the different deadline dates, and especially once I decided to apply early decision, since it was so early, I was hoping that once I got in, I wouldn't necessarily have to worry about too many of the other dates. But had I wanted to apply to many different schools at once, since the dates can be slightly different, I would highly recommend keeping them all organized. Otherwise, you might realize you really want to go to a school, but the deadline has already passed, which would be extremely disappointing.
Okay, I want to be respectful of everybody's time, so I have one last question, and it's from one of our attendees. I've heard you guys talk about applying early decision. Do you have advice about applying early decision? Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? What advice would you give on that? I'll go to you first, Caroline.
Yeah, for me, it was great because one, it's binding. So it took that decision off the table for me very, very early on. So I knew I was going to Holy Cross around Thanksgiving, which was it felt very nice. When everyone was applying and stressed out, I wasn't really a part of that. I already knew where I was going. I did hear, I heard it was easier to get an early decision because they know you're coming, they know you're interested. They don't have to gauge, do you really want to come here? It's binding, so they know you want to go there. And it's just earlier on. But I would say if you're not sure, you don't have to do it. It's not going to completely change everything. But if you know you want to go, it definitely takes the stress off very early on in the process, which is why I did that.
How about you? How about for you, Eddie?
Yeah, I completely agree with Caroline. I guess one piece of advice I would give out in terms of early decision is that I knew that I wanted to go to Holy Cross because of all of those things I mentioned earlier. I noticed a huge piece of the authenticity, the community, the academic rigor. I knew I wanted to challenge myself in terms of academics. So all of those things together, it was sort of a no-brainer for me to apply to Holy Cross early decision. And it really did some, like she was saying, binding, which means that if you did get accepted, you had to come here. And it's not a problem at all saying yes, because and I think it made the emotions of getting accepted into Holy Cross that more exciting. Because when I got the phone call, I got a personal phone call from the admissions office, not an email, not a text. It's like a phone call. You're talking to an actual human being, and they're congratulating you right then and there in the moment. And it was really awesome because overall, I think it just really took a lot of the stress off my senior year. In terms of having to apply to a whole bunch of other schools and writing essays on top of your regular schoolwork, on top of your extracurriculars. I knew that early decision was definitely the best thing for me. So overall, I'd say if you're thinking about doing early decision, just make sure it's a school that you want to go to and that you've done your research on. You don't want to go to a school early decision and then have to go there without you even visiting or even knowing that you liked it. So yeah.
How about you, Jacob? Thoughts on early decision?
I completely echo what everyone was saying before, and also being conscious of the dates. I would say that since you do find out earlier, you also apply earlier. Obviously, it's in the name, early decision. But in order to have a solid application at the time, I would recommend over this summer, since it'll be the summer going into your senior year, starting to get your essay together and starting to fill out the different applications and being mindful of when these dates are due so that when the time does come, you'll be able to apply and hopefully get in, and then it'll be a great story.
Awesome, guys. Thank you so much. We're putting in the chat right now the link to register for the rest of the webinars this week. Here's the topics. On Tuesday, 4 tips for first-generation college goers. On Wednesday, 3 tips to nail your admissions interview. That's going to be a really good one. Probably lots of information about the questions you might be asked and best ways to answer that. On Thursday, 4 keys to writing an impactful college essay. And this will be insight from real people who read applications, not from your uncle who he doesn't really know anyway. And then on Friday, a super juicy one, the inside scoop, how applications are read and admissions decisions are made. I don't know that there are other colleges giving away this sort of information about how we read applications. We're going to let you see what it looks like. Going to really show you the inside part of that. So use that link to register for the rest of our webinars. Thank you so much for coming. Be safe and be in touch.